Welcome. I'm Bertram de Souza, host of the Scribbler podcast and veteran Mahoning Valley journalist. As we brace for a second Donald Trump presidency that promises to be darker and more destructive than the first, we can take comfort in the fact that there are individuals willing to put community before self. One such person, whose name is synonymous with good deeds in the Valley, is Rose Carter. I've known Rose for a long time, and I can say that in my 40 years as a reporter, editorial writer, editorial page editor, and Sunday columnist for the Youngstown Vindicator, she is one of the few public figures I have respected. That's because she never had a hidden agenda, nor has she enriched herself at the expense of this region. Rose recently retired as executive director of Action, one of the most active and influential interdenominational, faith-based grassroots organizations in the Valley. And this podcast is my way of paying tribute to her. Well, Rose, thank you for joining me. And first of all, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, good to see you again. Before we get into the discussion about your career and your tenure as executive director of Action, tell the viewers a little about yourself, your background, your family, and then what drove you to become a community activist?
Wow. I think I was born that way because my parents, I'm from the Sharon line, which is now McGuffey Heights.
Right.
And my dad was a steel mill worker, and my mom was a homemaker, and she did sewing and hair and all of that. But they were in their late 30s when they had me, and I was a tumor, according to Dr. Perilla. Until a few months later, they said, no, there's a real live person there. And so that was born Rosetta Carter. Carter is my maiden name. Mm-hmm. And then there were like 4 children after that. So, and then I've always, even in school, my parents moved to the north side because they wanted me to go to the Rand School.
Right.
And that was one of the primary schools at the time. And so they wanted me to go there. So my dad bought a house over on Sycamore. Mm. And I think that I always, it was a great opportunity to grow up with the Italians, the Jews, and the upper class Black people.
Right.
You know, it was something if you lived on the north side, right. Gypsy Lane and all that area. So I was always one. I was a candy striper at St. Elizabeth, and being able to be at Stambaugh Auditorium, just always helping people. And so that's kind of like my background as far as, working with people and just being very outspoken. Mm-hmm. I was born that way.
And so when you went on to college, you went on to...
Yes. I went to YSU for a while. However, I did get married. I went to YSU later on in life, but I did get married to a great guy out of Pennsylvania who came here and was in the service. And I got an opportunity to go to Maine. That's where my 2 children were born. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Bangor School of Nursing. And so I was always helping. And then we moved to Alaska. And I lived in Fairbanks, Alaska, worked with the Eskimos and all of those things. And then we moved back down to New York and lived out on the island. So I was able to get some of that training there. But then he got out of the service and moved. You can always go back home. And home is Youngstown, Ohio. And so Leonard we came back to Youngstown, and then he sought a career with running a gas station over on McGuffey. But neither one of us was satisfied with what we were doing. And so he became one of the first African-American highway patrolmen in the state of Ohio.
Wow.
And served with them for about 10 years. And he also taught at YSU. And at that time, we had the opportunity to live wherever we wanted. And so we built a house with Lev Construction over on the west side, where our house was burned down during the construction. And we did not give up. Him and I were the same. We got out there, rebuilt our house, and I became the vice president of the PTA. And then I wanted my children to go to Cheney, and they started the busing. And so I was the only little Black woman out there with the signs against busing. And fortunately, we moved back to Columbus, Ohio, where we did a lot of things. I worked with different organizations, different churches, and I've always been in the church. Always. Grew up in Tri-Stone Baptist Church in Youngstown, but wherever we went, we were always a part of the church.
And so, how did you get involved in community activism?
Well, what happened?
Is it because you are an ordained minister? Is that how?
You know what? I've only been an ordained. Well, I've been an ordained minister since 2007.
Okay.
But I was raised in the church as a missionary, and so in that it was always a giving back to the community. And so I was very fortunate to be a little older than what in mind than what I was in age. And so I was able to work with churches and organizations because of my religious background.
Right.
And that gave me that opportunity.
Your name in the Valley has always been synonymous with community activism, community involvement. How did you get involved with, but your name actually became prominent when you became involved in action. So talk about your connection to action, how you became involved in action, and let's go from that.
Well, one of the things, Bertram, is that I had gotten into the community activist work even during the times that my 23 years in banking. I was one of the ones with Marnette Nelson, Judy Quarles, and a bunch of us. And we started the CRA, which there was a lot of redlining in the bank. And I was just blessed to be an African-American woman that was able to get into banking when there was not very many African-American or Black at that time, and especially not women in banking. And so I seized that opportunity during the 23 years in banking. I started with Alan Udell in processing in delinquent loans and helping people to keep their homes.
Which bank were you in?
Well, I was in several. I started with First Investment Mortgage, but then Dollar Bank. So I was with Dollar, and then Alan Udell taught me FHA, VA, and first-time home buyers. That gave me an opportunity to help those that did not have that were low income, but did not have that down payment. And so what I did through Alan, I went on to Mahoning Bank when he closed, and then they changed again, and I went to Second National Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And during Second National Bank is when I had the opportunity to work with Pastor Simon, Lonnie Simon.
Lonnie, right.
Because Bank One was discriminating against them getting loans for a new church. In fact, the church that they have now. And so I was able, with Presley Gillespie, I was able to work with Pastor Simon and get that church. What we did, we used our organizing and marching attributes, or whatever you want to call it. And I organized all the people at New Bethel, take their money out, and we marched down from Bank One over to Second National Bank and put the money in. And then I also worked with Elizabeth Baptist Church.
Right.
So I started doing that a long time. And then if you remember, the bottom kind of fell out of the banking institute after 20 some years. And so I decided to, quit banking. And so I retired then after those years, went on to help with over on Family Service Agency, getting people loans, doing bankruptcy training, all of that. And Pat Rosenthal heard about me and said, wait a minute, we need someone like you on Action. And so they came, she took me out to lunch. I should have known. She took me out to lunch and asked me if I would be on the board as their treasurer. And so I agreed, along with Father Noga, Eleanor Felder, and then later on, Father Hazel, Father Feda, and Michael Harrison.
Yeah.
And they sent me to Chicago for training. And while I was there, they needed an organizer. And I said, wait a minute, I can do it. And I sent them back a resume, and they hired me 16 years ago.
What was it about Action that attracted you? Because honestly, I was there when it was first created. I wrote about it when I was at the Vindicator. And yes, it was started by a group of clergy.
Right. Yes.
Denominational, Catholics and Protestants, etc. There was some pushback. There was some churches that didn't want to be involved, especially because there were these white priests who were involved in this thing and talking about the inner city and all of that. And there were some churches where the pastors were saying, "Don't come into our neighborhoods and tell us
what to do."
And so, but what was it about Action that attracted you?
Well, one of the things is I was actually hired to be able to bring the two groups together, the Catholics, the Baptists, the African American, and that's why I was hired, because there was so much division. And because of my background with New Bethel and with the community, and I'm also an ordained minister, and I always been, my dad was a deacon, so he was at all different types of churches. And so they knew us and they knew what we stood for. And so they trusted me, and that's what I was hired. And I liked Action because it was action.
Yes.
They did something. It wasn't just me sitting on a board, because any board I'm on now, I'm an active board member. I do not sit on a board just to say I'm on that board or to get paid, which I'm not paid. And so that's what I liked about Action, is that we made a difference and we spoke up, and it was a woman doing it.
Right. So when you started, what were the priorities for Action? What were they trying to accomplish? What were the goals then?
Well, the main thing, first of all, was unity, to bring us together. That was my main purpose, to build. Remember, it was only about 8 or 9 churches.
Yes.
And one of the things is it's clergy driven, because if our pastors get up, if they're strong leaders in the community, then they can get the parishioners to be able to follow. So our main thing was unity, to come together. And then once we got together, to listen to the people in the pews, grassroots, getting out there, listening to them, finding out about corruption, about racism, about housing, about crime, all of those things. So that was our main thing. My whole thing was to be able to listen to the people, and they weren't getting that because of just what you said, Bertram. These little white guys out there in the suburbs coming in telling us what to do. It took me 4 years to get New Bethel on, Reverend Simon.
Yes.
And then Mount Calvary.
Yes.
Mount Calvary was not going to come in, but relationships, because I'm a VRAN graduate, and Wagner was a VRAN.
Right.
And I set up a meeting, and we're sitting outside of Bishop Wagner's office, and Father Noga says, "I don't believe it. I don't believe it."
And you know what's ironic is that Bishop Wagner's Mount Calvary Church was just down the road
Yeah,
from Father Noga's St. Patrick.
right.
And yet,
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
very beginning, Bishop Wagner
yeah.
was
And
not.
now they're a member, a very active member. One of their young parishioners, well, their ministers is on the board.
Right.
And but no, they weren't. He could not believe it that we were in bishops. And then now that Bishop Tyson, we're still. So Bertram, it was all about relationships.
Yes.
And I just feel in the 15 years I was with Action, I accomplished that. No matter where they go now, they cannot say I did not accomplish what they hired me for.
So you became executive director in 2008.
Yes.
Was this before or after that huge gathering at YSU of all the member churches, all of the parishioners getting together? Do you remember that?
Yes. No, that was after. I was a part of it in 1999 as a member in the choir. Remember, we had a large choir.
Yes.
I was a member of Union Baptist Church, so I was just there. But to be made the executive director was under Pastor Macklin.
Okay.
Because the president has to be a clergy, a pastor, has to be a pastor. And so he said, well, no, we want to give her more authority. We want her to be able to negotiate, make arrangements, do whatever she needs to do, not as an organizer, but to build Action. And so they made me executive director. And then later on, I still did organizing, but I hired other organizers and trained them.
A lot of what Action has done over the years has been behind the scenes. It's never out there open. But there were some things that you all did that were out in the open. And finally, after a lot of discussion, and you and I had lots of discussion about this, I think one of the most visual things that Action has done is the food truck, the market. And I'll tell you why. Because for a long time, there was a discussion in the Youngstown area, not just the city, but in the suburbs and all of that, about food deserts.
Yes.
And then also there was a discussion about how these neighborhood stores did not have fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, fresh meat. They're healthy food, especially for children.
Yes.
And so this truck became like the symbol of activity. But what you'll accomplish was beyond that, right? So tell us.
Yes. You know what? The truck is just a byproduct of the food insecurity. Back in 2017, I confronted we always have a public meeting, and in 2017, I confronted those that were running for mayor. I think it was Tarpley, it was Tito Brown, two or three others, and we had them sign papers, a board saying that they would talk about food insecurity. That was in 2017, right. And come to get a group to do that. And we met a couple times, but nothing came out of that. I was not willing to wait,
right? Because
we're Action. So what I did is I put together pop-up markets with Jeff Magada using their workforce group. Right. And we went all over the city and downtown with fresh vegetables and fruits. But it still was not doing what I felt that we needed, because the food insecurity, we changed. It got to be so bad that we said, okay, wait a minute. I remember being on the Sharon line. I remember the watermelon man. I remember the chicken man. I remember the egg man, because I'm old. But I wanted it top quality. I wanted the people to be able to shop with dignity, be able to go onto the truck and shop and get whatever they wanted. And I wanted to make sure that those that gave the money was accountable for the funds that they received from the from the other lenders and funders. And so in probably it was about almost a year, 6 months, we raised a little over $1 million. And the truck is completely paid for. Both trucks are completely paid for. They cost us a little over $500,000 to equip it and do everything. And now they go, I think it was last year, they did a little over 540 stops. We go wherever. And because the county gave us funds, we're able to go all over Mahoning Valley.
Right.
And Sebring, Salem, wherever.
And
but that's not what we do.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that because there's always a perception that poverty only exists in the city of Youngstown.
Yeah.
That is a perception that only in the city of Youngstown do people not be able to go to groceries. And that's not true, is it? In your experience with Action, tell us about the region.
No, it isn't. Bertram, we go to Copeland Oaks. And Copeland Oaks,
yes,
down in Sebring is beautiful. But you've got senior citizens. It's not a matter of your income. It's a matter of the accessibility of fresh fruits and vegetables,
yes,
but it's also helping the farmers and the butchers, the meat people. Right. So no, we go all over Salem, Columbiana, Lake Milton, all over Mahoning Valley. And now that we're in Trumbull County, which is Mahoning Valley too, yes. Trumbull County commissioners gave us money. And so we go to Leavittsburg, we go to Lordstown, we go everywhere.
Now, and as you pointed out, it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of access and to be able to go. And if you're a senior citizen who cannot drive,
exactly,
it becomes very difficult to go to a grocery store if you don't have an extended family to help out, right?
That's in Sebring, we go to not only Copeland Oaks, but we go to the library. We go to the different libraries. There is no grocery store in Sebring.
Right.
And so therefore, this is great for them. And what we do is we have quality food there. I know we got we have anywhere from steaks, shrimp, oxtails, vegetables. One of the things also is we went over, it took us a long time because we had some problem at YSU. Here, the students, especially the international students, have not gotten fresh vegetables.
Yes, I know.
So now President Johnson is saying, hey, Rose, I met with him. He said, we want you because I think there was vendors that was already there and they didn't want us. But now that we met with them to make sure that we were not going up against them or anything, but especially those international students.
And there were a lot of them.
We had 50 coupons that I think it was $20 per coupon. They called me and said, we got hundreds of kids back out here. I said, go for it.
So where does the money come from to pay for all of the
You know what? The Mahoning Valley commissioners gave us $300,000.
Okay.
Mercy Health for 2 years have given us $210,000.
Oh.
Different churches, different organizations, different community foundations, Youngstown Foundation, different ones give the funds for the vouchers. Now, what we have did this year is now the Mercy Health, you still can get $15 worth of fresh. It can only be fresh vegetables and fruits. But now we want the people to be accountable. And so what we did now is they get SNAP, they get food stamp, they get whatever. Anybody can shop. I've shopped on the truck. Bertram, you can shop on the truck.
Oh, okay.
With your credit card, anything that you want. But now, if you spend so-called $50, we'll give you 15% off.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty good. Just like when you go to Giant Eagle and you get 4 or 5 meats for $25.
So where do the products come from? Do you go to a grocery store? Do you have a...
Yeah, Jeff Magada at Flying High, he's the one that runs the truck. And the truck is out at the care center.
Right.
And so he gets it from local farmers. He gets it from local growers, different things like that. Even if they do cakes and pies or whatever, it's the workforce that bake it. So it's like giving back to the people.
So you get a break on the prices too, on the cost?
Yeah, we do on the cost.
Good. So what, in addition to the truck, which obviously is really, I believe is a very positive thing.
Yes.
What are some of the other accomplishments that you are most proud of during your
Well,
tenure?
one of the ones was that we had gone during my tenure. We looked at predatory lending, and we saw that there were lenders
Yes.
that were out of state, but they were having housing here in our city. There was one right over on the south side of Youngstown. You might have seen it in the newspaper, and it was a tree growing straight up in the house. However, they were still collecting rent and money. And so what we did is we partnered with Youngstown Neighborhood Development, Ian Benniston, and we got a bus. And about 50 of us went down to South Carolina and confronted the owners. Now, they tried to bluff us. The guy, they had an African-American guy there from FHA, not knowing that I had worked for FHA.
Yeah.
He tried to bully me, and I'm like, nah, come on, And it was sort of like a black man, and I'm like, you going up against a black woman, So we left there, and what we did, like we do, we picketed. We went to his church. They called the police on us. Police understood what we were doing. We prayed for the parishioners to let them know what he was doing. When we came back, we met with the mayor and the different city council, different people, and we got an ordinance. So packed out City Hall. They said they had never had that many people. It was so bad until they called the fire inspector on us, and he was sitting right in the meeting. And we got that ordinance. I worked with Legal Aid, Patty Dugan, got those people a little over $200,000 back to get their monies back. And so that was another great accomplishment, because that's what we do. Yes. We organize the people in the pews and not tell them what to do, but help them to be able to help themselves.
Even though Action is a grassroots organization, you still have to deal with politicians. You still have to deal with local governments. You still have to deal with commissioners and council people and all that.
Yes.
Before I get into a specific discussion about Mayor Tita Brown of Youngstown, how have you been able to avoid the political quicksand that is so endemic in this region?
Well, you know what? I've tried to be truthful with them, but I've also been Action is only able to withstand the pressures by having strong clergy.
Yes.
And so what it is, and that was the main reason for bringing the black and white together, because if you notice, our council, our city has become more diverse. When you had more of the white pop people that was running it, then you didn't have, it was sort of like, okay, we'll listen to you. Well, now you're going up against your own people.
Yeah.
And the things that they do. So you've got to build that relationship with them, but still you have to stand fast on what you believe in. It's tough. It's tough because you have jealousy. You have those that want to that want to try to make a difference for themselves.
Yes.
And so it's kind of rough. But you just have to be steadfast on it. And it's been kind of that one is a tough one, because it's like if you don't play their game, then you don't get the funds that you need. And so what you do is go elsewhere. You go higher or elsewhere.
And in fact, as you talked about, you sort of have to compromise and work with and sort of make concessions, etc. when you're dealing with politicians.
Yeah.
Y'all have also been aggressive. So talk about the petition that you presented to Mayor Brown in Youngstown City Hall.
Yeah. Well, for one thing, it had been since 2017, and nothing had happened as far as a market, a grocery store. And we understood why big box stores do not want to come into the city. But at least let us see you doing something. And we didn't see that. At one of last year, all of a sudden, we had a ribbon cutting of something down on the south side. Well, nothing happened. It was a political game, and I wasn't going to be involved in it. So what we did at our grocery store, at our markets, what we did is we got petitions, and we wanted to know who the people were, the community. Over 800 signatures of people saying, what are you doing? And so we went to the city hall, we went to the meeting, and I presented it to the mayor, and he got mad at me. I mean, so he felt that I should have presented it to city council or whatever. Well, city council did some different ones, had helped, but isn't he the boss?
Yeah.
So, he didn't talk to me that was the second time he didn't talk to me for a while.
What was the first?
Well, the first was that we were very upset about how he handled 20 Federal Plaza.
Yeah.
The people. You don't these are human beings. I don't care whether you've given them a chance. I don't care what you've done with them. But to put them out in 24 hours or so many days without stand up and listen to what the people say. So we had a public meeting on it. We were over at St. John. Got upset with me, didn't speak to me for the longest. It's all right. I've known him since he was 14 years old. Come on. So then that was kind of a misunderstanding. Somebody told him this, that, and so we started talking. I never stopped talking. But then later on, when I gave these petitions, who was I supposed to give the petitions to? He's the leader.
Yes.
And then you used me for ribbon cutting, and you didn't do anything. Now I understand that you're giving it to somebody out of Cleveland or whatever, or even local. But what I'm saying is you gave your word, and we understand. And so therefore, I just felt that he should have been more accountable to those 800 signatures and those people. So I'm not there any longer, but I'm still working in the community. And I'm not going to give up.
I know. And you're still working in the community, even though you're retired, you're not giving up. And coincidentally, this year is the race for mayor.
Yes.
In Youngstown. And Mayor Brown has announced that he will seek re-election. But there are several other candidates who've come forward who have expressed an interest in running. So tell us about some of those candidates who have said they wanted to run. And also, I don't know whether at this stage you want to say who you support, but it's not going to be easy for Tito for re-election, is it?
No.
Let's talk about the mayor's race.
Right. Well, I had the great opportunity to be with you the last time. Hopefully I'll be with you this time. But the difference this time is that I don't have to be nonpartisan.
Yes.
I'm a citizen now.
Yes.
Before, I had to be nonpartisan because I represented action. Okay.
Right.
I don't represent anyone but Rosetta Carter. And I'm able to say and ask the questions that I want to ask. And one of the questions, even with Jamal Tito Brown, is his accountability. Mayor, I want to know, what differences have you made to bring industry in, to bring new people in, jobs? We haven't recovered since the steel mill. I'm sorry.
Right.
We haven't recovered. We had a little bit with the Lordstown, the car industry and stuff
Right.
like that. That went down. So what's happening? So I want to know exactly what is he going to bring to the table to make a difference. Now, there are others, Samantha Turner, John White, and then who's the other one? He's going to kill me. The flea guy.
McDowell.
McDowell. Each one of them brings something to the table. And really, if there was some collective things, and then we brought that each one would bring, or if they gave it to Tito, maybe he would be okay. And I don't know if others are going to run, but right now, I don't know.
And Rose, as you pointed out, the region some parts of the region have recovered since the mills, have done well. But the city that was once the largest community in the Mahoning Valley has been shrinking. The population is declining.
What are we, 62,000? Or are we 62?
I believe it's below that. But crime is still a problem. Poverty is still a problem. Neighborhood deterioration is still a problem. A failed public school system is still a problem.
Yes.
And there at times have been government corruption. Now, to what extent does the city need somebody in leadership who will be able to address these issues? Exactly. And sort of, is there somebody that you believe would be ideal to do that?
Bertram, when I look at the ones that are running, the only two that I could see is possibly who's the guy at Flea? McDowell. And Samantha. Those are the only two. And still they have limitations.
Yes.
They have some limitations. I don't care who your parents were in the city or how much, where you come from, but we still need somebody strong. And I'm not sure it should be somebody that's already in our city. However, you've got to have somebody that have the heart for Youngstown.
I'm reminded of a conversation we had, and I mentioned the name of an individual who had indicated to me that person was interested in running, and your response was that individual is too old. And so my question is, at this stage, does the city need somebody new, some new blood in City Hall?
You know what? I know what I said as far as somebody old, but that person is almost as old as me. And I'm too old.
Yeah.
And when I say about too old, my thinking, because I'm still back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Right. And we need somebody that is almost between Samantha, Oliver. We need almost somebody in between them and that person.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, because even when not resigning from Action, it's time for new blood. However, Action is not going to continue if they don't use some of the wisdom that I have put into Action and other leaders. Father Fada, Father Noga, Eleanor Felder, Harrison, if they don't use that, I'm afraid for the city and I'm afraid for Action.
Right. Who will, now that you're gone, and you were there for 16 years, what's going to happen to the leadership of Action?
Well, there's an interim director, which is the pastor, Jeff Stanford, who had worked with me and had been a president of Action at one time. And he's worked with me for about 3 years. So he kind of knows the in and outs of Action. However, he has two other jobs,
Right.
and Action is a
Full-time.
full-time
Right.
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
He would be very good to continue, but he is a pastor of a very prominent church in Steubenville, and then he works the steel mill. So unless the board, the president, the board, some strong leaders, the board gets behind him and works with him, then I'm afraid for Action. Yeah.
You retired on the 16th of December, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
20th.
20th?
16th. Yeah, the 16th I cleaned my office out.
Okay. Yeah. So do you miss it already?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. I cried for 2 weeks.
Why did you?
I made the decision.
Why did you retire, Rose?
You know what? It was time. There was new blood, younger blood, younger people that felt that this old blood needed to retire.
Okay.
And so I have my way of doing things.
Yes.
And I'm going to do it according to the book. And so it was decided that, they did not offer my succession plan for a year. And so I was not going to tolerate or fight.
So as we close, and I do appreciate the time, and we'll be. This is not the end of our.
Oh, this is fun. I enjoy it. Thank you. This helped me.
And we will be planning a mayoral debate on this podcast, like we did the last time, which was very well done. And we work with Channel 21 to get that done.
Yes.
Tell me about the people of the Mahoning Valley.
Wow.
They are resilient because, my God, this region took such a huge economic blow with the closing of the mills, etc. And then, the closing of General Motors, Lordstown plant, and all of those. The people that you've gotten to know in the Mahoning Valley, talk about them.
Yeah. You know what? There's no place like home. And Youngstown is home. When I go to Warren, people are like, "Oh my God, you're from Youngstown." Well, yeah.
Yes.
Or if I go, I've traveled all over, and you say, "Well, what's your hometown?" Youngstown, Ohio. Oh my God, crime city.
Right. Yes.
But it's home. It's the people that we know, whether it's Black, white, Hispanic. Church. These 16 years have given me an opportunity to work with Catholics, to work with Baptists, non-denomination. And when you work with all types of people, and all of a sudden it's like Youngstown is home. The people are the same.
Yes.
I meet the older people now in the churches, and it's like we connect because we're at home. We're from Mahoning Valley. And the men and women that have worked in our community, our council people, our mayors.
Yes.
They've had a rough time because we've had some ups and downs, but yet and still we've stood it. A lot of our mayors and council people are different.
Even county commission.
But still we've stood.
Right.
And it is home. So I can't imagine, and especially at my age now, I can't imagine going anyplace else.
Rose, listen, it's been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Be in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.
All the best. Best of luck.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.